Hello and welcome back to Reimagining Cyber. I'm Ben, and in this episode we're going to be talking about a type of cybersecurity danger that hides in plain sight. I am, of course, talking about insider threats. Whether intentional or not, insiders are becoming one of the most effective paths into corporate networks. And with me today is Tyler Moffitt, Senior Security Analyst at OpenText Cybersecurity. Tyler, good to have you back.
Thanks, Ben. Glad to talk about this one. Insider threats are huge topics and seem basic, like watch your employees, but really that's a lot more complex. There's a lot of different types out there that we're going to talk about. And some recent big news happening about them for sure.
Indeed. Let's start at the top then. What exactly qualifies as an insider threat? How are you breaking them down?
Yeah, so there's two main types. I would say malicious insiders obviously is the biggest one, probably the scariest. I mean, they're both scary I'm going to talk about, but these are malicious insiders are people who knowingly abuse their access either for personal gain, revenge because they were laid off, or collaborating with, threat actors, however, because they were bribed, you name it. But people who intentionally from the inside knowingly abuse their access and help cyber criminals for an attack or something like that. And then the next one is unintentional insiders. So these are usually employees who are tricked, right? Manipulated or careless. So really easy here, phishing, right? Multi-factor authentication resets, clicking the wrong link, or spoofing or faking to call IT for password resets is the ones we're really going to cover because those are very damaging and what's been going on in some of the latest news. And so the first one, malicious insiders, I would say is way more rare than the unintentional insiders, obviously. The second group's going to be more common because it's exploited at scale through social engineering and phishing emails, but the malicious insiders can be super damaging for sure. And so it's probably every company's worst nightmare. It's somebody selling their own company out, for a bribe.
And a recent malicious insider case study, the Coinbase breach. You've written a full breakdown on it. First of all, where can we get that?
Yeah, it's OpenText Cybersecurity, our website, the community. So community.opentextcybersecurity.com. It's on the front page, talks all about it. But this Coinbase one, this happened last week, all right? And it was actually really big news, right? And this is the malicious insider one. And it was actually a third-party call center where a contractor was bribed by cyber criminals. So attackers basically impersonated Coinbase IT staff, used voice phishing is what it's called, and convinced the employee to access internal tools, make changes. But at some point, they actually had to offer them money in order to do it. And they still did it, right? And they gathered customer data really bad. And then they used that data that they were able to grab to target phishing attacks against those victims of the customer data that was taken out that they shouldn't have been able to get because of this malicious insider. And then they actually got crypto from those victims, the customers, thinking that it was Coinbase telling them to, send them, and they sent it to them. And so it's, really damaging there. Lots of news around it. And I'm sure everybody here has at least heard about it, right?
So not only was an insider compromised, it led to customers losing money. So I'm presuming that Coinbase took it very seriously.
Yeah, so of course they do an internal investigation, work with law enforcement, and because they disclosed it, well, obviously working with all the data privacy governing laws because the customer data was taking GDPR, CCPA, you name it. But here's what was interesting and something that I think a lot of people are talking about, and maybe you've heard about this, maybe you haven't. Usually when this happens and they have this data, they go to Coinbase or whoever the victim is, right? Whoever they've breached, they said, give us $20 million. And will not release this customer information. That's literally what the attackers did. They took this with Coinbase and were like, give us 20 million and you can sweep it under the rug. And Coinbase actually disclosed it, told everybody about it, although after only a few days. And then they put up a $20 million bounty of their own, leading to the information that leads to conviction, apprehension of those responsible. And that's something that we've not really seen, where they turn the gun back at the ransomers, if that makes sense. We've never really seen anything like that. And so this was widely publicized as their tactics to try and get it. And so it's definitely interesting take. I like it. I support it. I'm never a big fan of paying the ransom and sweeping it under the rug, which many businesses do, obviously. I do think we need to remove the stigma because I know a lot of people don't like you know, talking about a breach when a company is hit and they have to disclose it all and all this information that was taken. I mean, it's really nasty for the business. But the good thing about Coinbase is they actually promised to reimburse every affected customer. So every customer that their information got leaked and then they were a victim of a phishing attack that led them to send crypto unknowingly, they got scammed. They're reimbursing every customer, right, who transferred crypto as a result of the phishing, linked to this incident, which is really good. It speaks to good reputational of Coinbase because a lot of people just assume with exchanges, if you send your money away, it's your own fault. But this is really big. So Coinbase is doing a good job here. But it just really shows you that the real world financial impact that insider breaches can cause, like massive.
And given this was a third party contractor who was targeted, it kind of highlights that as an issue, third party access, and also vendor risk as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if this is a third party call center in India, I don't know how much money they make, but it's probably not that much. So obviously bribing is gonna is gonna go over fairly well. But it makes it very relevant to the broader issue of, third party access and vendor risk and all that stuff that you've got to vet, right? It's got to be tighter. It's got to be better. I mean, you could have all the best internal controls in the world, but if your vendor doesn't, you're still exposed. So this is a big problem, and I think a wake up call for a lot of people who outsource their call centers. Like, you are risky. It can be just done just like this.
And was there any particularly sensitive back end infrastructure that was compromised?
I don't believe so. I think Coinbase did a good job disclosing everything, and they were able to stop them sort of mid attack. Their SOC people were able to see like a lot of the suspicious activity, and then were like, "Stop it mid flight." Obviously, they still compromised some stuff from the call center, and were able to get some customer data to go after and fish. But they did do a good job to get them. They stopped them before they could move laterally, right? Once you can move laterally and compromise one computer to like multiple computers in the environment, then it's like, oh, that's a real big problem, right? But just the initial access and data exposure was enough to launch those phishing attacks that I talked about, right? The breach was surgical, low noise, high impact. They still got crypto from people sending it to them, just from customer data leaked to platform into phishing attacks. But it could have been way, way, way worse if they got like way more access inside Coinbase backend infrastructure to where, we may be having different discussions. But definitely interesting, right? And it's a good one to cover and talk about because it's big in the news.
Let's move on then to accidental insider threats, and something that in my neck of the woods over in the UK, we've seen a big example of recently, and the repercussions are still hitting over here. It's a group that you've been tracking called Scattered Spider. They've been behind several major breaches. What is their angle?
Yeah, so this one, I'm sure we've all heard. Marks and Spencer, Co-op, Harrods, allegedly. And I think they're now even trying to go after U.S. retailers. Obviously, they're liking retailers right now, but Scattered Spider, they're called Octo Tempest. They also have another name, UNC 3944, as far as I know, that's what the CISA is calling them. But basically, they are social engineering groups that operate today. They're native English-speaking people. So they are not from foreign countries, or at least we don't believe they have really, really good skills for impersonation. That's their specialization. And they trick internal employees to give up credentials and reset, multi-factor authentication. That's their job. They're the ones behind like what we saw with the UK retail, US retail, and they were famous before. Like they've been famous for a couple years now. I'm sure we all remember Black Cat ransomware, how they hit MGM Resorts and Caesar Entertainment breaches. Well, they were just the ransomware was deployed, but it was really Scattered Spider who actually first infiltrated and handed off essentially the breached access that they got. But obviously the news that's just been going around now is the UK retailers like Okar, Co-op, and Marks and Spencer.
So they're just the access brokers, really.
Yeah, absolutely. You have the ransomware developers. These are the people at the top, okay? They make payloads for ransomware. They make the infrastructure, they make the leak site, they make the command and control servers, everything work, right? And then they hand it off to the affiliate. They don't actually conduct any attacks themselves because that's risky, right? It's all about risk mitigation. And so then they have affiliates. These are the people who come in that don't really need to know anything. They don't have need any coding knowledge. They say, I'm willing to do crime and attack people. And I go, okay, great. I've got the payload and infrastructure for you. You're going to conduct the attack. You're going to deal with the victim for payment. You're going to do all the risky stuff that I don't want to do and pull off the attack. And then the affiliate gets a share. The, ransomware developer group gets a share. But in order for them to even start the attack, they have to go to an access broker. And access brokers are the ones who conduct the phishing attacks to compromise like one machine in an environment, or they brute force RDP credentials, or they use exploits in an environment that has a whole bunch of these types of hardware or firewalls or software that hasn't been patched, and they, that's their backdoor, their way in. And people sell access to this, if that makes sense. And so those are called the access brokers, and that is what Scattered Spider is, right? They are some of the best, I would say the best, actually, access brokers, probably most famous, top tier, top shelf, creme de la creme access brokers out there would be Scattered Spider. And, they get in, impersonate IT, they get past support controls, and then they hand it off to the ransomware affiliate, right? Who then moves laterally, uses all the tools that the developers gave them, and attack them. And then that's it. It's crazy.
Regarding Marks and Spencer's M&S, just so you know, if you've not been across it, this happened almost a month ago now. They're still really struggling to get back to normal. The online orders are still suspended. You've still got some shops having issues with contactless payments and empty shelves. I was in there a couple of weeks ago and they tried to make me pay with cash. I was outraged. I didn't quite know what to do. I haven't seen cash for years. Co-op, incidentally, their IT team made the early decision to just take the computer services offline, and that prevented the criminals from continuing their hack. So that's the way they addressed the problem. Okay, let's move on then to comparing malicious versus unintentional insider threats. Coinbase had a paid-off insider. The retail hacks were more about social engineering. Which one do you think is the bigger problem long term?
It's a tough one, but probably unintentional insiders, because you can only bribe so many people. Like, I know that one seems like you would think initially the malicious insider, but social engineering scales, right? AI makes it even worse, and it's an accuracy with numbers thing. You can send spoofing phishing emails to everybody, and it's like everybody can get tested, and some people can fail, and then you crack with those. But with bribing, like, again, you can only bribe so many people. But the deep fake voices, the spoofed email domains, fake IT Slack messages, calls, phishing, you name it, all these work when really employees aren't necessarily trained, to question them.
And how does hybrid working, remote working, impact on this?
Yeah, it definitely adds to the chaos, right? You're remote. The more remote your workforce is, the harder it is to validate who's who. And that's honestly why these tactics are doing so well for the criminals.
Okay, we've painted the picture of misery, if you like, but Tyler, we need solutions. That's why we're here. How do you defend against something like this?
Well, I've always talked about it, and I'm really big on it. Layered defenses, right? Layered security, right? People first security. So obviously, while it is, I'm going to say this buzzword, and I don't want everybody to get upset because it's ideally, I feel like people like zero trust. Okay, it's the word zero trust. It's not fully obtainable in the unicorn definition, but it's sort of a mindset. It's a posture that you have, right? Don't assume internal equals safe. Validate everything that you can, right? You're not going to be perfect. You can't have perfect, tightly zipped zero trust everywhere, but it is a mindset and a security posture you can have. Next is privileged access controls. Use least privilege, right? Don't let the help desk reset anything without a secure escalation process, especially depending on who they're trying to escalate. Like if they have domain level credentials, like there should be a whole nother tier of just a generic employee. And MFA hardening, right? Multi-factor authentication. No resets without live video. That's becoming more popular. Secure pins, just multiple validations, multiple little passwords you can give, right? We do that a lot now for remoting in VPN beyond just your password. Also having MFA you got to go on and give, and then another code you have to give for your MFA to even improve that. I get it adds extra layers that may be a little more cumbersome or what do you call it? Inconvenient, but that's a scale. Convenience and security is a scale, and obviously how secure do you want to be, you're going to have in some inconvenience. And beyond that, user and entity behavior analytics. Look for unusual behavior, like someone logging into a system at 3 a.m. or jumping between departments. Like there are things like that you can set rules in to, sort of trigger red flags, if that makes sense. And then, of course, to wrap this all up, training, right? Huge. Not just for your employees into what to look out and what's a scam and try and get them to be aware of it, but also like support roles, right? Your support staff need to be able to spot fake internal calls because that's how a lot of these guys are getting in. They're pretending to be employees that need to reset their credentials, and this how they get in, right? So it's a big problem.
And what about solutions on the vendor side of things?
Sure, yeah. Tighten contracts, review access logs. You got to do it's annoying and tedious, but you've got to do like the vetting. Let the third-party vendors meet your security bar, right? Especially if they're customer facing and have privileged access to customer information, even more so in that regard. It's massive. You've got to do it, and I've done these forms. I've gone through vendors and done all this, and it is annoying, but it's important. It's so important, and we just see it play out day to day and why it's important.
Just to wrap things up now, final thoughts, and I'm pretty sure I know what the answer is going to be to this one. Are insider threats going to grow?
Yeah, I mean, that's
Silly question.
Set me
really,
up for, of course. Yeah, I know. Of course it is. Yeah, identity is a new perimeter, whether it's a rogue insider or some tricked contractor or a social engineered help desk agent who fell for a reset. Or, threat actors, they target people, not just endpoints, especially these access brokers, right? The Coinbase one shows that, even one compromised actor or contractor who becomes a malicious insider can trigger a chain reaction, right? And then the scattered spider retail attacks shows how access brokers and ransomware gangs, they work together and they exploit trust from the inside. And it just sort of starts out small and then just scales to just catastrophic damage. I mean, I can't believe you told me that Marks and Spencer still, is struggling with payments even a month later. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. Tyler, fantastic stuff as per always. I asked you earlier on, but just to underline it for me, where can people learn more about this?
Absolutely. So the URL is community.opentextcybersecurity.com, and we've got all this labeled out and written out, and I'll even share the podcast when it's published there as well.
Yeah, and we'll have links to that in the episode notes. Tyler, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on.
And thanks to you for listening to Reimagining Cyber. We will, of course, be back next week. In the meantime, do remember to follow the podcast so it's ready to go as soon as it drops.